Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the BF War Room. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined by the Thigh Doctor himself. And like his shirt says, when in doubt, thigh it out. The Buffalo Bills inactive list is officially out, so we're going to get to that. But first, it's time to thigh it out, to talk the medical stuff with the Thigh Doctor himself. So legally obligated to show this clip before we get rolling. All right. So the inactive list is out, and both of there are some surprises on this list. So here is the inactive list for the Buffalo Bills. Matt Breida, not obviously a surprise. Justin Zimmer, who was full this week. So we're going to have to talk about Justin Zimmer a little bit. Maybe
Out
something
again?
happened to him. Out again. Don't know if that's injury related. It can't possibly be performance related because Vernon Butler's fucking awful. We will get to that later on, obviously. Spencer Brown continues to be out with that back injury. Dawson Knox with a hand. And then once again, F.A. Obata and Boogie Basham are inactive for the Buffalo Bills, going light along that defensive line. Cole Beasley, active with the ribs. Heard him in the last game. Jordan Poyer, active with the shoulder. They said he bumped it in practice and then was like a no-show in practice. So I think the word bump was maybe a little light. So let's start with Cole Beasley and the ribs. What's he dealing with there? How much do we expect him to play today? How effective do you think he'll be?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be fine. So as long as they're not broken, it's doable. They have pain medication that they can use that'll numb it out quite a bit. And hang on one second.
This is what you get for being on live. Live.
Yeah. Okay. I know that was terrible timing. Okay. Yeah. So with Cole, they can numb it up for him, and then he's not going to feel it as long as the shot doesn't obviously pierce his lung like they did to Tyrod Taylor. It should be pretty good to go. He also can, he could put the rib protectors on there, which can do a good job. Mm-hmm. Now, can he take a bunch of hits and it kind of wear off towards the end of the game? Absolutely. But we should kind of see Cole looking as usual this week.
Yeah, we got Dominic Bouchard coming in saying, can someone tell me why we drafted Basham and then play that bum Butler? The answer there would be they play two different positions. Obviously, obviously Boogie Basham can kick inside, but my guess is the Buffalo Bills more than likely, a la AJ Epinesa, they want Boogie Basham to slim down and play edge. So your hope for the Buffalo Bills is that AJ Epinesa, Boogie Basham slims down and ends up being your edge next year when guys like Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison are off the roster. So that would be your answer there. As for Cole Beasley, you're right. You just got to numb it. And that's probably why he didn't practice all week. You're not going to give the dude a shot for practice. You're just going to let him rest those ribs and then come in for practice. Talk a little bit about Jordan Poyer and his bump in practice this week on his shoulder.
Yeah. So anytime someone's saying there's a bump in the shoulder, what does that probably mean? Most likely it's AC joint. So that's the joint at the top of your shoulder. It's very common. We saw that with Tremaine Edwards. We saw it with Josh Allen last year. We've seen it with Trey White this year. The thing with the AC joint, though, is when you're colliding or you're landing on that shoulder, it's going to get aggravated. So obviously he must have ran into something, sprained it, it's sore, whatever. Take him out of practice, keep him limited. But I saw him warming up on Friday. He looks fine. Besides just like hitting it, the only other things that could affect it is kind of coming over your shoulder sideways. So theoretically, if he's coming up and he's trying to catch a pass overhead, it could pinch on him a little bit. But these AC joints are not a big deal, and I don't see this limiting him today, unless we see a huge hit or a vicious kind of tackle where he lands on that shoulder.
Yeah, so certainly Jaquan Johnson, Damar Hamlin are going to be on notice with their helmet on the sideline at any moment waiting to come in. Do you think this is an injury where, like, they would limit him, like maybe like they would like rotate him every other series, or is this type of the thing where it's like you play or you play or you don't play?
Yeah, exactly. No. It's not something that's going to in and out. But what they can do is they get the score up and take him out early just to avoid it getting aggravated.
Yeah, let's hope for the sake of the Buffalo Bills that is the route that it goes to, that we can get the score up early. So we got Beasley active. He's playing. Boyer active. He is playing. According to our main man right here, Thigh Doctor, the medical expert, both of them should be fairly full go. That brings us to maybe some of the more longer-term injuries. And I wanted to start with Spencer Brown. You talked about and you touched on his back last week. 6'9", 315 pounds. A guy who's big like that. Any update on that back injury? Are you any less concerned than you were a week previous?
No, I'm more concerned. So listen, he had a workout injury. So what happens in the gym when you're lifting heavy weights? You don't get a contusion. It's not like something just dropped on him. And I hope it was working out because we know he likes to jump through tables. So I don't know. But anyways, so I'm lifting weights. I'm doing something heavy. I'm going to tweak my back. I'm worried that he's got a disc injury. Now, does that mean he needs surgery? No. But at some point, after a couple weeks, if it's not getting better, that's the option. So usually how the process goes is you'll go conservative. You'll try to work it out, do the corrective exercises that kind of put the disc injury back in place. And if it's very mild, which it probably is, that's why they didn't just go ahead and do surgery right away. They're probably trying to work it out. And we saw him on the field last week at one point late in the week trying to do stretches, but he just wasn't feeling it. Can he get over it? Absolutely. But how long are they going to give him? I mean, it's already been 2 weeks. So
yeah. And that was Mr. Diggs comes in and says his age of problem being so young, keep him out longer to be safer. Wouldn't we have IR'd him? Like if we wanted to hold him out, like I said, there's going to be 2 week injury. Maybe there was just the question mark or the unknown. And like every week it's just a different week and a different question mark. Maybe they thought he'd be ready for this week because you just don't know until you wake up one morning and you're ready. But I mean, in retrospect, he missed a game. He's about to miss a second game. If they would have just IR'd him, he could have missed next week and then came back the week after. We would have had an open roster spot. Maybe they didn't want to call somebody up because there just no one to call up. I don't know. What are your thoughts here on not IRing him, but just continuing to have him sit on the active roster, but be inactive and not practice?
Yeah. So a couple things. I think at this point we can rule out it's a muscle strain. Could it be a sprain of the joint? Absolutely. You ever heard the SI joint? It's kind of where your hips meet your low back. He could have thrown that out. He also, he could have a disc issue, but I'm sure if he did, they've MRI'd him. They realize it's very minor. We're not putting him on the IR right away. And it's just kind of sit and wait, see how long it takes. These guys, they go on anti-inflammatories. And if they have to, they can do a epidural injection. So I don't know. It's getting a close call, but the longer he's out, I think it's the closer we're getting to the point where they're going to just shut him down. So I'm just very weary how this is going.
I mean, I think if you're a Bills fan, the positive spin that you can put on this if you're a Bills fan is that Darrell Williams is still a very good right tackle. The only problem is you'd probably prefer him to be playing right guard right now, the way our interior offensive line is sort of contributing to this football team. And the fact that Spencer Brown has really high upside and is quite frankly a better run blocker than Darrell Williams. So disappointing indeed. John Feliciano was placed on injured reserve this week. And Polikin, we're going to get to Vernon Butler in about 5 minutes when we bring on Matt Zigai. But John Feliciano, they waited a week and then put him on IR. What does that tell you about the calf strain that he's dealing with?
Yeah, well, I think they wait until Saturdays at this point. So I think it was always, hey, if he's going on the IR, they were going to wait till Saturday when they make the moves. But what we saw is he was pass blocking. He was kicking back. He had no one was on him. He was kind of like pass blocking air at the time. Yeah. And then he changed direction to go help out the right tackle. And that's when he pulled his calf. So when someone kind of blows out a calf, listen, I've done it. It sucks. It feels like your Achilles just snapped. But if it's really bad, you're going to go down. He didn't. He kind of like sprung on his foot a little bit, and then he jogged out the play. So based on seeing that, we could say, hey, it's in the mild to medium. So what's a mild to medium recovery for a calf strain? Anywhere from 1 to 3 if it's super mild, 2 to 4, maybe 5 if it's medium plus. And then if it's a real severe one, you're looking at a full 4 to 6 week recovery. So seeing that it was mild and I kind of guesstimated, hey, maybe 1 to 3 weeks. They didn't put him on the IR right away, but now that I think of it, they do wait till Saturday, so I shouldn't have jumped the gun on that. Next time I won't. But here's the deal: Spencer Brown's out, he's out. They had to make a move.
Yeah.
When Knox got hurt, that's another 3-week injury ish. They had the benefit of the bye week, so they didn't have to throw him on the IR. Now they're past the bye week. Feliciano gets hurt. They have another guy down. They need to get guys onto the line for backup. So even if it's a 3-week injury, I think they just said, hey, it's a numbers game. Put him on the IR now. Yeah, he'll come back after the short-term IR, but we had to get some guys called up. So
and one of my hotter takes, not that I have a lot of hot takes, is that the Buffalo Bills sort of coddled John Feliciano a little bit, and he's got a much longer leash than a lot of players. I mean, it's not like Quentin Spain was playing better football and got benched. You can't tell me that Wyatt Teller wasn't showing you in practice that he's better than John Feliciano the way John Feliciano performs on the football field. There's just no friggin' way you can tell me that. It does seem to me like John Feliciano's relationship with Bobby Johnson gets him a longer leash. The fact that he plays video games with Josh gets him a longer leash. The fact that he has a good relationship with some of the leaders in that room.
I think the third.
I'm on record. I'm on record saying that.
I think it's his flexibility that he can go from guard to center.
Cool. He could be a backup. Well, he doesn't need to be starting. And I think we're at the point where I wouldn't be surprised if the Buffalo Bills IR'd him because they were just afraid to tell him he sucks and wanted to go give Cody Ford another shot and see what Jamil Douglas has. Because honestly, it's just not clicking for John Feliciano. I really hope when he comes back in 3, 4, 5 weeks that he's a backup, because he does not deserve to be starting on this football team, on a team that wants to go to the Super Bowl, on a team that prides itself on playing the best players. You see Gabriel Davis has taken a step back this year for Emmanuel Sanders. The fact that John Feliciano is in the field at all is a joke, an absolute joke, barring injury. And there are guys behind him, I think, that deserve a shot more. Hell, I would rather start Jamil Douglas at this point than John Feliciano and just see what he got. And if he doesn't got it, then you can kick him back and start John Feliciano. But John Feliciano is so bad, it shouldn't be something where you aren't trying to replace him every single week. Throw a guy out there every single week, because they're going to be just as bad as John Feliciano until you find someone better. That would be my take. But hey, it is what it is. Last thing here for you is Dawson Knox. They didn't IR him. You mentioned he could be back next week. He could not be back next week. If he's not back next week, the question is, why didn't you IR him? So is he back next week for this next upcoming game?
Yeah, I'm going to give you 95% yes. He's already catching passes. I think that's like the first big hurdle to get over. The second big hurdle is blocking. So based on the fact that the healing process of the bone takes at least a full 2 to 4 weeks, he's going to be just passing 3 weeks this Tuesday. They're probably saying, hey, you can catch. It's pretty much healed. It still has a little way to go. Go ahead, catch balls out of the jug machine. Don't throw it back. Just catch, secure. And then next week we come out, we start working on the blocking. Is there potential that he takes a nasty hit to the backside of the hand with like a helmet and it aggravates it? Yeah, but I mean, bones are good, man. They're easy and they're predictable. So once they're healed, they're healed. Can they get sore? Yeah, but these are professional football players, and I don't think it's a big deal. If we're talking a soft tissue injury, those are things that can kind of get re-aggravated real easily and kind of restart the process. Once the bone's melded, It's going to take a whole new fracture to kind of re-injure it. Whereas, going back to the calf strain with Mongo, it's like, yeah, he tweaks it. It's strained, comes back a little too early. You have to start the process over if he re-aggravates it. So.
All right. Thank you so much. Give us your game prediction before you head out here.
Oh, nice. I think we're going to go 48-3.
Okay. That is, you know what? I know we've shut out 2 teams this year, but every week I get these 3 and 6 and 0s and all this stuff. It's just I can't fathom. And if any team can do it, the Jacksonville Jaguars can do it. Especially if James Robinson doesn't play. I haven't had a chance to check in on that yet. Hosting this show, so maybe Matt knows when he comes on whether James Robinson is active today or not. It looked unlikely last night, but or someone in the comments section might know as well. But yeah, this offense for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm really hoping we could hold them to as very few points as possible. Get Jordan Poyer, Cole Beasley off the field, resting up for the latter half of the season. Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate it. And we're going to bring on now. You want to give us a Go Bills before you head out?
Yeah, go Bills, and don't forget we have our new shirts in the shop if you guys want to
Yeah,
rep
when
these
in
out in
doubt,
public.
thigh it out. While I mentioned that you have an article that drops every Saturday, do you want to like pop the pecs a little bit? For any, yeah, there we go. He's got an article that comes out every Saturday, breaks down the Buffalo Bills injury list, kind of like he did just here. It is a great read. So check out those out every Saturday at thebuffalofanatics.com. Thank you so much, Alex. We appreciate it.
All right, go Bills, fellas.
Go Bills. All right. Now bringing on the man himself, the new Thursday co-host, at least temporarily, of the Air Raid Hour. We got Matt Ziga. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing good, Steve. How are you, man?
Not too bad. I mean, I'm really sad now because apparently Rico's good and the rest are buns. So we're buns. I don't know. Like, we gotta have to live our life as buns. A couple of people were mad at me for Feliciano bashing, but I want your take on this. He's the weak link right now to this football team. Like, if we want to win a Super Bowl, if this team wants to do what it takes to win the Super Bowl, he's been absolutely ragdolled anytime a defensive lineman with any stature has been put up against him on the interior, whether it's Chris Jones or whether it's Cam Hayward. He is the weak link. So as much as people want to like him because like he's a cool dude on social media, or like he's like a fake tough guy who only, who after the whistle will protect Josh, but not so much during the whistle. He's friends with Josh, etc. Like there's all these reasons to like Mongo, but like he's just not performing on the football field. I don't understand why people are so defensive about John Feliciano. Are you one of those people who are defensive about John Feliciano, or are you one of those people who feel like the Buffalo Bills, even mid-season, should be actively trying to replace him in the starting lineup?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steven. And I think I'm more along the lines of agreeing with you. I think that John Feliciano is, arguably the worst offensive lineman, the worst starting offensive lineman, I should say, that the Bills have right now. Now, it seems to me with, as you mentioned, Bobby Johnson, Sean McDermott, regardless of his play, it doesn't seem to me like they're going to take him out. I mean, they've been quick to take Cody Ford out, right? Which I don't think Cody Ford has necessarily done anything that is arguably worse than Feliciano. I mean, you mentioned, right, Super Bowl aspirations for this Bills team. Let's just go back to the AFC title game from last year. What Chris Jones did to John Feliciano single-handedly ruined the Bills' game plan ultimately in that football game, and it played a major factor in the offense ultimately struggling that night and the Bills being sent home. And so if you want this Bills team to win the Super Bowl, right, ultimately you would ideally want to have better play from that position there. But you mentioned replacing him in season. I don't really know what the Bills are going to do about that. I think that the time to do that was pre-trade deadline, and they ultimately didn't go that route. Is Ike Butker going to be that much better than Feliciano? Is a Ryan Bates or Jamil Douglas going to be that much better than Feliciano? That remains to be seen. Obviously, we haven't seen, Bates and Douglas. Butker, he's fine, but is he this great guard that, is going to be that much of a difference heading down the stretch run? I don't think so. I heard you and Alex speaking about it prior to me jumping on here. Ultimately, when he gets back from that calf strain, whenever that is, with the way the Bills have been going about, John Feliciano developing that relationship, I expect him to go right back in the starting lineup, whether that is the right thing or the wrong thing, which I would tend to lean towards it being not the best thing there. I ultimately think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, we got, a couple people saying like you can't be elite at every position. I still think that like, even though you can't be elite at every position, John Feliciano has gone from in the past being a replacement level player to being a below average player. I mean, like I said, like he is now officially that weak link. And I think one of the things is he cut down on a ton of weight. Like he cut a ton of weight in the offseason, lost like 15 pounds. And to me, and this is the issue I've had with Ike Botker in the past before too, Mitch Morse is not like the big heavy set center, right? He's 6'6", he's 315 pounds. He likes to get to the second level. He can get pushed around by some of those bigger guys. To me, if you're the Buffalo Bills, I want like the biggest, widest base dudes possible. And I think that's one of the things that hasn't been talked about is the fact that John Feliciano did cut that weight and how much that might be affecting his game right now. But anyway, he's on IR. It'll be really interesting to see how the Buffalo Bills perform left to right along the offensive line over the next 3 weeks. My prediction is this week you will see probably Deion Dawkins, you will see Ike Butker, you will see Mitch Morse, you will see Cody Ford, and then you will see Darrell Williams at right tackle. Puncher's chance, maybe Jameel Douglas gets in at right guard. I doubt it. I really doubt it.
I think that's a story. If Cody Ford is not starting in this game, I think that is a much bigger story.
Massive story, yeah.
Douglas.
And I'll be scrolling Twitter over the next hour or so to see if we get any reports, whether it be from Matthew Perino or Joe B or whoever's on the sidelines there, to see who's warming up at the starting five. And if anyone in the comment section happens to scroll across a tweet that tells them who is warming up with the ones on the offensive line, feel free to let us know in the comment section. Again, a little limited here behind the camera, but anyway, we had a question from Sheldon Cole. He said he's more concerned about the lack of depth at corner back. Depth hasn't really been tested this year in terms of injuries. I know Teron was banged up earlier this year. That seems to me like a position where it's the way the Buffalo Bills scheme things up. Like they'll be fine there as long as Trey White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, and Teron Johnson stay healthy. Are you even worried remotely right now about CB2, or is this something like that could rear its ugly head in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think Levi Wallace, right? He gets a lot of flack from Bills fans, to say the least, and ultimately, I think Levi has been a steady performer for this team throughout his tenure. Obviously, he's an undrafted guy, right, who didn't have a ton of expectation coming into the league, and it's clear that Sean McDermott, this is another guy that has attached himself to Sean McDermott's hip. He clearly loves him. He likes what he can bring to this defense, both on and off the field. And I think that he's performed well this season. But ultimately, I think that there is still some left to be desired from that CB2 spot. I mean, you look at that Titans game, what A.J. Brown was able to do against him over the middle of the field, really had his way with him in the second half. I think that there have been times when the Bills have faced better passing offenses where Levi's been exposed. And, ultimately, when you do get into the postseason, you're not going to be playing the Dolphins. You're not going to be playing the Jets, right? You're going to be playing teams that ultimately are going to be able to throw the football and spread you out with some good weapons. And I think that can be a bit of a concern, and it is a bit of a concern for me, especially when you go up against, like I said, teams that can spread you out. And so I think Trey White, again, right, he doesn't have the gaudy stats from an interception standpoint, but that's because he's locking down his side of the field. Nobody's really throwing towards him. So the reality is they're going to be picking on Levi Wallace. I think, like I said, he stood up well, but there is concern there. And if he does go down, right, then you're looking at Dane Jackson coming in. I know he filled in admirably last year, but after that, it gets a little bit murky there. So I think there is a bit of a concern. Hopefully, Levi's able to stay healthy and he continues to perform the way he has been. But ultimately, I do think that there is a bit of a concern from a depth standpoint. But again, similar to guard, there's really nothing that you can do mid-season that's going to be addressed in the draft. And
it'll be, I think the biggest test remaining on the schedule is Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, those two elite level wide receivers, plus some of the other weapons they have there, and Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller, etc. All those tight ends that they have, and Gronk and everything like that. That looks like, at least in the Buffalo Bills' sake, a really bad matchup for them defensively, especially with all the tight ends. Even though they don't contribute as much, Cameron Brayton, O.J. Howard, the way that we have struggled against tight ends in the past, even they could have a day complimenting Rob Gronkowski. And especially if the Buffalo Bills have to go heavy because they run a lot of 12 personnel packages. And despite the fact that they don't really have a lot of elite level running backs, they run the ball. So I think that's going to be a really tough matchup. And that's going to be the big indicator for how this secondary could possibly perform in the playoffs, is going to be that Tampa Bay game. We got Logan coming in, saying the Bills going to rest Bees ribs today. We had a great segment about 15 minutes ago with Thigh Doctor. He said Beasley's going to go. He got a shot. He's likely to.
He's active.
He's active. He's likely to, as prognosticated by the Thigh Doctor himself, get a shot in the ribs to go and numb it and play through the pain in this game. That's a great. So he's going to play through the pain, obviously.
Yeah.
Doesn't practice all week because you don't want to shoot a guy up with a bunch of those type of drugs for a practice setting. Let him rest it up, shoot him up with those drugs for a game setting. I don't ever want to underestimate an opponent, but you're playing the Jaguars and you're still going to shoot up Cole Beasley and throw him out there. Does that show just how important Cole Beasley is? Like, he's sort of that, pull this in case of emergency type of safety blanket for Josh Allen. Do the Buffalo Bills maybe fear having him out of the lineup as that safety blanket if things aren't going right?
Yeah, Dave and I talked about this on Thursday, right? We're playing the Jags, a 1-6 team that we're massive favorites against. Do we, rest a Cole Beasley, for example, who's maybe battling some injuries and just say, hey, Cole, we don't need you for this game. Get healthy, get back to 100%, and we'll see you next week. But obviously they're not going to do that. Now, I'm not convinced that Beasley's going to get a ton of snaps in this game. We'll see ultimately how that ends up playing out. I think you could see Isaiah McKenzie's snap count increase a bit here, especially in this game if Beasley is still, battling a little bit of a rib injury there. But like you mentioned, I do think that Beasley is the X factor in this offense, right? He really is a guy that I think it's clear Josh has built a lot of trust with. I think that when they need a big play, Cole Beasley is the guy that, they're ultimately going to for that, right? He is just a guy that seems to be extremely reliable whenever you need him. And I would expect that to be no different today, right? Even if his snap count is down, I think he does get a couple of catches, whether that be on third down, whether that be some quick hitters on first down to, get into second and short or even continue to move the chains. But I think Cole Beasley is that guy on this offense that Josh clearly trusts and that is extremely important to what the Bills ultimately want to do there.
Yeah, no, I'm for sure. So it's interesting, right? McKenzie, it would naturally be the guy to slide into that position. I almost wonder if maybe this is the Gabe Davis game where you have your options now, right? You have Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs in the boundary. You can move. That's the beauty of Emmanuel Sanders. You can kick him inside. Stephon Diggs has been like it's weird, and we're going to talk about this in the next hour as well with our panel. It's Stephon Diggs is on pace for 90 plus catches, 1,000+ yards, 5-6 touchdowns. Like a good year for an NFL receiver.
And, yeah, exactly. And
a great year for an NFL receiver, but it doesn't compute because he hasn't had any of those like big games that you're used to seeing from a perennial player like that, a perennial All-Pro player like that, or a perennial Pro Bowl player like that.
Right.
It could maybe Emmanuel Sanders and Gabriel Davis get a shot on the outside. Maybe try to get Stephon Diggs some looks in the slot, some of those looks that you've been getting Cole Beasley in some of these big games they have. I wouldn't mind seeing Stephon Diggs, work in the slot as well. So it should be super interesting. All right, we got about 1 more minute with you before we bring on the panel of we got Evan Harrington, we got Clay Troya, we got Manny Diol, we got someone else too. They're not there in the waiting room yet. Kyle Naps, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so we got Kyle Naps as well. Easy to forget him. He's more memorable for his giant logoed hats. But what are your predictions for this game? What did you what sort of picture did you paint on the air raid hour on Thursday? What do you think is going to happen in this football game?
I think it's going to be a laugher. I predicted 41-13 on Thursday. I'm going to stick with that here today. I think that this is really the game, where this Bills passing attack explodes, right? I expect them to come out throwing the football early and often. I think that this Jacksonville defense is I think it is the worst defense that the Bills have faced all year, might be the worst defense that they will face throughout the rest of the season as well. So I think that the Bills are going to come out, throw the football early and often. I think they're going to try to attack downfield, because of late it's been a lot of quick hitters, right? Get the ball out of Josh's hands. Although there have been some injuries on the line, right? Cody Ford's going to slot in. Ike Bucker is likely going to start at left guard. The only pass rusher that really concerns me for Jacksonville is Josh Allen, and I think that Darrell Williams and Deion Dawkins can ultimately hold up against him. So I like the Bills to win big today. I think Trubisky can see some time in the fourth quarter here.
Trubisky's not playing, but Davis
Webb
action.
Yes, Davis Webb. Well, maybe a little Davis Webb action.
You had your notes from Thursday you're looking at before we went on the COVID visit. But yeah. All right, Matt. Thank you so much. Matt will be filling in for me on Thursdays during the air raid hour for the next couple of weeks, at least until my basketball season is over. And by looking at me, no, I don't play basketball. I coach basketball. That sweaty Sean Miller looking dude with a suit on the sidelines. But
like
thank you,
that
Matt, so
comparison.
much.
For
I
sure.
appreciate it. And we will be back in 1 minute with our countdown to kickoff panel. Evan Harrington, Clay Troya, Kyle Knaps, and Manny D.O. We will be back in 1 minute once I click this button here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the BF pregame tailgate, joined again by the esteemed panel of Clay Troya, Evan Harrington, Kyle Knaps. Got a new hat today, Kyle. I like that. It's big. It's big cursive, but not as big as the Buffalo logo. And we got Manny Dio. Still laundry day in the Dio household. How you doing, Manny?
Good.
All right. So, anyway, let's get things rolling here. It is an unusual inactive list for the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, Cole Beasley active, which kind of shocked me a little bit after he didn't practice all week. Jordan Poyer active. This seems like a week where maybe guys like that could rest up a little bit. Guys like that could take a week off, get right. Clay, I'm going to start with you. Do you think the Buffalo Bills made the right decision starting Cole Beasley and starting Jordan Poyer this week over possibly giving them a rest week?
Well, the thing is, they're active, but that doesn't mean they're going to start. That just means they're going to be out there on the field with a uniform on. So they probably will start. At least I think they'll play the game. I think if they have any tweaks to any of their injuries going on, if there's anything that it's like concerning or even past comfortable, I think they're going to take them out because frankly they should. But I do think that they're probably going to start the game, and I don't think it's a terrible decision. I mean, it's hard to win games in the NFL. It doesn't matter who you're playing. The Jets have beat two pretty good teams in the league, so the Jaguars could maybe have a great week, and we don't know. So definitely start the game with those guys out there. If you don't need them, pull them out and let them stay healthy.
Yeah, no, it's unusual too. Like a guy like Beasley. Again, I feel like he needs to be possibly that break glass in case of emergency guy, because the Buffalo Bills, whenever they want to get into a rhythm, seem to look towards Cole Beasley. Not to mention the fact that if you inactive Beasley, like an extra defensive lineman, Matt Breida, like it's not like you need to call up a guy from a practice squad because you're short at that position. You still have plenty of options, even if he just sits on the sidelines with his helmet off the entire game. Jordan Poyer, on the other hand, again, that safety position, you might not want to waste a Josh Thomas call up or something like that. So great point there from Clay. Evan, I want to go to you now. Vernon Butler. We need to get to the bottom of this because Justin Zimmer practiced all week. So unless he has re-aggravated something on Saturday or on Friday, Vernon Butler is active over Justin Zimmer. What are your thoughts on Vernon Butler getting the activation over Justin Zimmer?
Yeah, Vernon Butler is an interesting player. He's not one of our best pass rushers, in my opinion. Obviously, playing in the interior defensive line, you would obviously like to see Justin Zimmer over Vernon Butler, because I think we can all agree here that Justin Zimmer is a way better player than Vernon Butler. And even F.A. Obata scratched. If I would rather see F.A. Obata kicked inside than Vernon Butler, honestly, because is Vernon Butler that guy? I don't know. He makes a couple plays here and there, but is he really worth a roster spot on your 53-man active roster on game days? I don't know. I just don't like seeing Vernon Butler in there. But I'd rather see a guy like Justin Zimmer. Unless Justin Zimmer is banged up, I guess you throw Vernon Butler in there. But again, there's just other guys you can throw in there like FA Obata as well.
Yeah, I really do hope that this is a situation where we find out that, like, not that I hope Justin Zimmer's hurt, but like that he aggravated some.
Whoa. Clay, you're muted.
I am muted. That was interesting.
That was wild.
I was wondering for a while. I was like, is that me? That's a little bit laggy, but I think it was Steve.
Yeah, I think that was Steve. Yeah.
So we're gonna wait for Steve to come back. What was he talking about? I was so distracted by what just happened.
Vernon Butler.
I don't know. I think
Vernon,
with Vernon Butler, I think we have to consider the possibility that they just actually like him in the lineup. Like, as much as everybody else doesn't, the fans don't. I don't know why they do. I don't know like their reasoning, but he just keeps on playing over guys that everybody else seems to be like, well, we want him active. I think we just have to consider maybe the Bills just actually like him in the lineup for whatever reason. I don't understand it, but it seems to be their move week in and week out to keep playing him.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. I think it's kind of like the Trent Murphy situation last year where they just played Trent Murphy, I think, for his leadership skills. And I don't know what Vernon Butler's leadership skills he brings because, you got players like Jerry Hughes and stuff out there to help with that stuff. So it is interesting, but obviously, like Clay said, there's something that they like about Vernon Butler that just seems to always put him back into the lineup. So.
Yeah, I think the biggest inactive that we should probably talk about is, since I know they've already talked about some of the inactives, but we haven't gotten into this, obviously, just the four of us now, is James Robinson not playing. So, Clay, we'll start off with you. What did you think? How big of an impact is that for the Jaguars as a team, for the Bills as a defense trying to defend the Jaguars, for the game plan as a whole? What do you think that's going to do for this game with James Robinson not being active?
Yeah, I mean, James Robinson he's probably one of the better players on their offense, on their whole team. So having him not be in the game is like completely, it's got to be pretty tough for whoever's calling plays over there, because you take away that second dimension. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is a rookie quarterback going up against one of the best defenses in the league, one of the best passing defenses in the league. They don't really give up a lot of yards. They don't give up touchdowns. So it's going to be really, really hard for him to try and figure that out when there's no help from the run game as well. Those linebackers are not going to be as sucked up as they were. Go watch that Titans game and look at those linebackers on the Bills just getting completely sucked up into the line of scrimmage because of that play action.
Nice Urban Meyer move there.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not really going to happen as much. Those linebackers aren't going to get up there quite as much. They're going to be able to sit back a little bit and play the pass a little bit more. So that's going to be a lot harder for Trevor Lawrence to play the game and to be able to read the coverages and find those gaps. So it's definitely a pretty big hit to their offensive game plan, I'm sure.
Yeah, I wonder how much usage we're going to see from Carlos Hyde this game since James Robinson is inactive, because Carlos Hyde is their second featured back. And I just wonder how much they're going to ride on Carlos Hyde or just put the ball in the hands of Trevor Lawrence and really have him dictate the rest of this game going against the Buffalo Bills at 1:00.
Yeah, I agree. That's a big loss for the Jaguars. James Robinson's a beast, and he's one of their most consistent players on offense. And for him being out, it's really going to be a struggle game for Trevor Lawrence. So.
All right. Well, hey, I'm back, gentlemen. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're good now.
I'm using like an old Chromebook now. I don't have my microphone or anything. I'm using a straight up computer webcam on my old computer. My computer just shut down, so I have no idea what happened there. But what did it look like? I heard it scared Kyle.
Sounded great.
You did a little remix there. It was
there's
like,
a bunch of, they've got a remix going. Someone said they were having an acid trip, Scott Blakely. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting little moment there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get that checked out. But yeah, thank you guys for filling in for me there. And it seems like you're still on the conversation of Vernon Butler. What I was saying before I got remixed was, I guess, other than that penalty, he didn't embarrass himself against Miami, who didn't run the ball all of that well against us. And despite the fact that James Robinson is out this game, they're still going to try to run the ball with Carlos Hyde, which is probably something you guys mentioned. I mean, they run a lot of 12 personnel. Sometimes they'll drag 3 tight ends out there with Chris Manhertz and Luke Farrell and Dan Arnold. So this is a team that's not afraid to use tight ends. So maybe the Buffalo Bills were looking to get heavier in that portion of the game with Vernon Butler. But again, I think many Bills fans will be disappointed if they find out this week that Justin Zimmer was a healthy scratch over a Vernon Butler. But moving on, I want to talk a little bit about Bills Josh Allen, not Jaguars Josh Allen, Bills Josh Allen. This is a week where you would expect, playing in Florida, playing against a team that's 1-7, playing against a team that maybe doesn't have a very scary defensive front outside of the guy that shares your name in Josh Allen, who can rush the passer. This seems like a week where the offensive line can sort of get right. And this seems like a week where Josh Allen can put up some MVP caliber numbers. Should the expectation for Josh Allen today be, 300 plus yards, 3+ touchdowns? Or do we just need a day out of him that gets us a W? Like, what are you guys looking for in terms of Josh Allen's day? Evan, I'll start with you.
I mean, you obviously always want to see your MVP caliber quarterback have MVP games every week. And I think he's going to continue that. He's probably been, other than Dak Prescott, Josh Allen has probably been the most consistent quarterback in the MVP race. And I think he continues that today, because outside of Shaquille Griffin, there really isn't an opposing player in the Jaguars secondary. So like you guys mentioned earlier in the first hour, if you move Stephon Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders around the line of scrimmage, throw them in the slot, throw one outside, whatever, and, just really have a diverse lineup of receivers going on, that can really confuse the Jaguars secondary. And that will just have Josh Allen get heated up early and really put up some MVP numbers like we want out of him this week.
How about you, Kyle? Fantasy prognosticator yourself. What are you expecting from Josh Allen today?
I mean, you definitely always hope that it's going to be the 300-yard, 3 or 4 touchdown game, especially against a team like the Jaguars when the Bills are as good as they are. I think, obviously, he's worth starting in fantasy every week if you want to go that route. He should be able to put up good fantasy numbers, hit his projected limit. I would expect that this week from him. For me, what I'm looking for in terms of like an actual game standpoint, though, it's less about the numbers and more about how it looks. Because last week we played against a defense that was not very good. The Dolphins, they're just not a good defense. And it just didn't look very good in the first half. He kind of got things going a little bit in the second half, and it looked a lot better just as a whole for the offense. I would want to see, even if the numbers end up only being like 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and you're a little disappointed statistically, if he still just looks consistent and he looks more like he did in that second half against the Dolphins, I would walk away from this happy with how he played. But obviously, I think you always would end up wanting more if he only ends up getting 250 and 2 TDs, which is weird to say still, but I think that's just the truth at this point with Josh Allen. If that's his numbers on a weekly basis, you're like, maybe he could have done a little more. But if he's consistent, then we're just gonna, the offense will keep rolling. Last week it was just a tale of 2 halves in that regard, though.
Mm-hmm. Clay, I got a question for you. Tyson Campbell has seen his snap count increase over the past couple of weeks. There's obviously injuries to guys like Herndon. So it is likely that Tyson Campbell might be one of the boundary cornerbacks for the Jacksonville Jaguars today. Tyson Campbell was a second-round pick. He's a great athlete, but he's not a refined product. And that was the knock on him coming out of college. Not a refined product. Going to take a couple of years to develop. All the physicality is there, ceiling very high. Going up against Stephon Diggs, going up against Emmanuel Sanders, veteran receivers like that. Is that the matchup you're looking for, Josh Allen? Whoever is lined up on Tyson Campbell?
I mean, honestly, I don't know if it matters. I don't know if it matters to Josh, really, because I think he doesn't really look at who's covering these guys. He looks at his guys and what routes they're running. And I don't really think it matters too much who's across from him. You saw him throwing with pretty good confidence at Byron Jones, at Xavier Howard. He doesn't care. He'll try and hit those guys no matter what. And even when against the Titans, when those cornerbacks kept on going out, they didn't really target that left side as much as we had hoped they would. So maybe they'll learn from that and be like, hey, we should target these guys, especially if they're struggling throughout the game. But But really, I think it's probably going to be a similar game plan to as it was against Miami, because you have a little bit of freedom and a little bit of liberty to take an extra risk against teams like that. So they're probably going to try to take those deep shots early. You know, Diggs and Sanders are probably going to be getting down the field pretty quick here. And Josh is going to throw the ball deep. And if it's one-on-one with one of those guys, then he's going to take that opportunity. And if he hits them, great, they're going to keep on running him. But if he doesn't, they're probably going to switch to something that's a little more safe and maybe kind of underneath and hit those guys that are more surefire routes.
Manny, to you now, what are your thoughts on Josh Allen's day today? What are you expecting from Josh Allen?
Well, I expect a big game every week just because I have him on 2 of my fantasy teams. So I expect big games all the time. But, you know, like, I think my biggest thing is how he looks in the red zone. We've talked about it all season. You know, the red zone's been kind of inconsistent at times. I think last week, I think they went 100% from the red zone. So I want to see a little bit more consistency out of there. That's where I'm going to see if Josh Allen is back to Josh Allen, or are they still struggling with inconsistencies in the red zone? So that's my biggest thing I think I'm going to look for from Josh Allen there.
All right. So I want to transition now to the running game. So obviously last week, the Buffalo Bills, it seemed like they were trying to force the running game down the throats of the other team, despite the fact that they weren't having much success with the running game. And it sort of seemed to stymie or slow down the offense a little bit. So this week, do we see more of that from Brian Daboll and the Buffalo Bills? Tommy Sweeney, maybe bringing Reggie Gilliam in, trying to do things to force the running game down the throat and just prove to themselves it works? Or do you think this is a week where the Buffalo Bills maybe start to go a little bit more 10 personnel, bring Quentin Morris on the field, or do some different things on offense to try to flow everything through the passing game like they did in the second half? Or do you think that they are still tinkering with and trying to fix the running game this week? But before we do, we have a super chat here for Evan. And someone wants to ask you if you think Lonzo Ball is good. So let's take a break from the Bills tailgate to get Evan's thoughts on Lonzo Ball. And then, Evan, let us know what you think about the Buffalo Bills running game this week.
Yeah, I've been paying attention to a little bit of the Chicago Bulls season this year. They brought in Lonzo Ball. He's been a pretty good acquisition for them. He's been really good defensively. He's been paired up really good in the backcourt with him and Zach LaVine down there in Chicago. And obviously, Lonzo Ball started off with the Lakers, had a little rough outing, went over to New Orleans, had a rough outing over there. But I think since he's gotten to Chicago, he's really become the best version of himself as an NBA player. And he's really just gotten to that borderline all-star level that we all thought he could be a couple years ago in the NBA draft.
I didn't realize Sean McDermott was coaching the Bulls. That's great. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the running game, Evan? Do you think the Buffalo Bills are still going to try to force it today? If they do, are they going to have success? Or is this the week where we start to, flow our offense through the passing game and try to find that short yardage through the passing game to supplement the running game that's struggling?
I don't think they're going to try and force it, but if it's 3rd and 1, they might try to force it a couple times like they did last week against Miami. That just really killed our drives when it was 3rd and 1. You would bring in Zach Moss or Singletary, whoever was running it. They would just run it up the middle and it would just be short yardage losses or whatever. But you have a quarterback who is 6'5", 245. You're paying him all this money. You got to put the ball in his hands. Again, you live or die by Josh Allen. You don't live or die by the running game. You live or die by Josh Allen. So the Bills just need to put the ball in Josh Allen's hands. And do I think they're going to overly, pack the run down our throats this game? No, they're just going to try to run here and there when they can. But I think they're just going to put the ball in Josh Allen's hands today and see what he can do with it.
We got a super sticker here from Jim O'Hara. Thank you, Jim. We always appreciate it. Throw a comment or question in there if you got anything you want to say. But we always appreciate those super stickers. Clay, my question to you here is this. Same thing with Evan was talking about here. Do you think the Buffalo Bills, how do you think they attack the running game this week?
Yeah, so last week it was a little frustrating because I think they tried to run the ball because they wanted to run the ball and not because Miami's defense was in a situation where it was advantageous for the Bills to run the ball. So it was kind of a, we're going to force it type of thing. So we want to run, so we're going to try it. So I feel like hopefully they've learned from that and they won't just force the run to say, hey, we should establish a run game. And instead they should try to adapt a little bit better to, what's the defense giving us and can we run the ball against it? I think early in, kind of the first half, we saw the Bills running the ball way more than we wanted to. We did see some screen passes in the first half, but I think after the first half into the second half a little bit, we saw a lot less running of the football and it was a lot more screen passes, get the ball into a playmaker's hand out on the boundary with blockers in front of him. And that was the substitution for their run plays because the run game just wasn't working. So I hope they can do something like that again. If they do try to force a run game and it doesn't work, they have options like that because they have so many athletes that they can just get them the ball out in space and it's basically a run play. You get 3-4 yards and that's acceptable. So I hope they don't try to force it because I hope they learned a little bit from something last week when it just wasn't working and they were getting maybe, like 2 yards a carry or something ridiculous like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did. It kind of seems like Dable sometimes is like, hey, let's run the ball this week. And that's what they do.
Yeah, we got a good question here from Matthew Montgomery. And Kyle, I'm going to throw this question to you here. Do you feel like the Bills are forcing the run because they know they're going to need it later on this year in the playoffs? What are your thoughts on this comment here from Matthew?
I think that probably factors into it a little bit because there's certain defenses where your offense is just better than that defense. So if you're going to try things that you're not as good at, those are the games to do that in. So last week against the Dolphins, that was one of those games. This week against the Jaguars, this is probably one of those games. So as much as I don't want them to do that, I wouldn't be shocked if we walk away from this game being like, oh, they were trying to run the ball a little bit too much again. Maybe they're trying to run the ball in weird situations, just to try and get the running game going, because as much as this is a passing league, in order to win games late in the season and then in the playoffs, you do still have to be able to run the ball effectively. And so I think they want to make sure that they can continue doing that. I don't necessarily love that they're doing that or that they did that last week. And if you look at the analytics of it, Warren Sharp is a guy who's one of the better analytics guys, just like talking about the NFL. He's a big proponent of first down or second and long. Do not run the ball. It doesn't matter if you're trying to catch the other team off guard. Sure, it might work every now and then, but it just doesn't work more often than not. Like passing the ball, even if you have an incompletion, then you just throw the ball again. That is more often than not more effective than running the ball on first down or second and long. So I would love to see them not take that approach, but I think that there's a high potential that they're looking at the way the team worked last year, and they're like, oh, we need to be able to run the ball better than we did in the playoffs. These are a couple of good games to try and get that going, so let's give it a shot right now.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you in terms of what you had to say, or at least Warren Sharp had to say. Brian Dable has come out and said that in the past too. Like Brian Dable has come out and said, I understand the analytics of running on first down are not great. I understand the analytics of running on second and long are not great. He's come out and he's verbalized that to the public before. And yet he was still running the ball on first down a lot. And he was still running it a lot on second and long, which again, I think Clay, you made the right point. Like, and Matthew Montgomery too. It's just, they're trying to figure it out. And they're using maybe some of these opponents who are lighter opponents to try to figure that out. And last week it almost bit them. So hopefully, I don't know. Maybe they try it again because they think even less of the Jags than they do of the Dolphins. But the Buffalo Bills really do need to get to the bottom of it. Speaking of the running game, Manny, you do a podcast every Friday with Kyle Knapp and Casey Reed, where you pretty much just explain to them how fantasy football works. You tell them, what picks to make because you're usually the one who's correct. So my question to you here is this, and you got a special little visitor over your shoulder there in the background, making a little cameo. My question to you is this: who has a bigger game today, Zach Moss or Devin Singletary?
I am gonna say Zach Moss. I think Zach Moss just because he's in the passing game as well, not just the run game. So I think he's going to have a bigger game. I did mention in the podcast that I think that this might be a game where we see a 100-yard rusher. I don't know who that is, but I think this is the game where, like Kyle said before, like, these are the games that you want to try to establish the run, because these defenses are not as strong. This is where you could try out. We've proved over again, just like last week, that this is a team in the second half, like, where we adjust really well, and we can come back from that if we do struggle against the run. And so I think Zach Moss is going to be the guy I think gets played more. And my daughter is kind of distracted.
Yeah,
here.
I want Zach Moss to play a little bit this week, kind of like your daughter is sneaking up on you right now. I want Zach Moss to be a little bit sneakier. It seems like he's actively trying to find contact, which is great. You want a running back that's not afraid of contact, but it almost seems like he's trying to find contact at the behest of like doing other things, like trying to make a cut move or things of that nature. So I would love it for Zach Moss to maybe worry less about finding contact and to just try to play his game, because I do think he's going to be the lead dog in this backfield. And I'm with you, and I think we have a 100-yard rusher today, because I think the Buffalo Bills are going to try to find a little bit of that balance. There's been a couple of comments now here about Josh Allen. I mean, there were people earlier saying they want to see a Josh Allen angry run this week. There was someone earlier predicting Josh runs for 100 yards. Elephant Man comes in and it also predicts that Josh Allen runs for 100 yards. I love Josh Allen running the football as much as the next guy. But Clay, I'm going to start here with you. At what point do the Buffalo Bills need to stop relying on Josh Allen to get this run game going?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of tough, because when you have Josh Allen running the football, you have a lot more options out of what you can do for that. You can even have an extra blocker if your running back goes ahead and is blocking as well. So, and also, I think Josh Allen's probably the most patient runner on the offense at the moment, where he has no problem hanging out behind the line of scrimmage and wait for his blocks to get set up. Moss, I think, is a little bit better at that as well, since he's more of a one-cut guy, so he'll wait till the block and then he'll shoot the gap. But you're kind of right about what you said about him finding contact. To me, it seems like he's kind of running a little bit like Mike Tolbert, where it's as soon as I get past the line of scrimmage, I want to find somebody that I can hit. Instead of should I find the open gap? I don't care. I can hit that guy. And that's kind of like how Mike Tolbert used to run the football. And Zach Moss isn't quite as big as him. So and he can make those moves to get around people too. So it's definitely something that maybe he should stop making those business decisions quite so often. But I don't have a problem if Josh has to jumpstart the rush game. If we need to do a couple runs for him just to get the defense to respect the run a little bit more, or at least respect that Josh could run the ball, that opens up the game in RPOs too, because Josh can pull the ball and he can run the ball himself, or he can pull it and throw it, or the running back can take it to a completely different part of the football field. So I definitely think having him as a weapon is so nice, because you have the ability to use him as kind of a jump starter. But I don't think he should ever really be the focal point of the running game. Unless it's absolutely necessary, where it's like we need to have this run game in order to be successful, but it's not working out. So I think it'll be interesting to see, especially with this offensive line that hasn't played a snap together. These five guys are all going to be completely new with each other. So
Is that me or Clay that we lost?
That's Clay.
Clay.
We're struggling today.
Yeah, this is.
Can I throw something else in with the running game?
Yeah, go for it while I try to get Clay's frozen face on the screen.
So Manny and I kind of talked about this a little bit on the show Friday, where we were on differing sides. Where Manny wanted the Bills to run the ball to set up the play action, which it typically is a great option. I'm more on the side of the Bills need to pass the ball to set up the run game, because I think recently the Bills have been trying to, and we were just kind of talking about this, forcing the running game a little bit too much. And I think they're just doing it too early. I think if the Bills are a little bit more patient in trying to get the run game going, it can be more successful, because we've seen games this year where the Bills have been successful running the ball. It's just typically been more late in the game when they're trying to kind of put the game away or just run the clock down or whatever it may be. We've seen them be able to run the ball successfully. It's not like they haven't done it at all. And yeah, they've used Josh to jumpstart it a little bit, and I'm fine with that. I just don't want to lean on him all the time to do it. But I think they need to be able to just say, here, we're a passing team. We know that. We're going to pass the ball, make you respect our passing game. And then once we get a feel that you're doing that consistently, then we can throw in some of those run plays that we don't necessarily always do the best, because we know you're looking for the pass more often. So I think that's probably a route that they could go if they don't want to use Josh to actually jumpstart the running game in terms of like giving him carries consistently, just pass the ball because you're going to be successful more often than not. And then once the defense is kind of laying back, respecting that more, then start to run the ball down their throats, or at least try to.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. You saw in the second half last week, we started passing the ball, supplementing the run game with screens, and then Zach Moss and Devin Singletary were busting off some big runs. So, yeah, I'm totally with you when it comes to using the passing game to setting up the running game. I know you have to leave. We're probably 2 minutes over on you.
I'm actually okay right now. I'm
right.
Okay. Yep.
So I was gonna ask you if you wanted to give your game predictions, but I guess maybe we can hold off for a couple more minutes on that. Want to play a little game here? I want to focus on the Jacksonville Jaguars. No James Robinson today. That's a big oof for their offense because he's a big part of their offense. He's a huge safety valve for a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who honestly shades of Josh Allen. He's getting beat up. He's kind of struggling the talent around him department. You can see the flashes. You know the talent is there, but it's just not showing up on the stat sheet. They're probably going to have to rely more on the passing game today unless they want to run Carlos Hyde 40 times. So they have 3 receivers there in Jacksonville. They have Jamal Agnew, who's that shifty gadget Isaiah McKenzie type. They have Laviska Shenault, who's like a running back playing wide receiver, very good yard after the catch guy. And then they have the veteran in Marvin Jones. Who has the biggest game for the Jacksonville Jaguars today? Is it Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, or Jamal Agnew? Manny, I'll start with you. Who do you think has the biggest game today?
Yeah, me and Kyle talked about this. I mentioned Laviska Shenault. I think he's been a little bit disappointing. I think the pundits were very high on him before this season started, and he's kind of been just meh. But I have to agree with Kyle. He brought up Marvin Jones. I think Marvin Jones, he's been one of the most consistent receivers the last couple of years being in Detroit and even here in Jacksonville. I think he's the guy I think you're going to have to watch, I guess, if there's anybody on that wide receiver. He was one of the guys, and Kyle was right as well, and I hate agreeing with Kyle so often, but he is the guy that I wanted as well for the wide receiver 2 spot when Brown left and we got Sanders instead. But he was the guy that I thought would be really good complementary to Stephon Diggs. And so, yeah, he'd be the guy I'd be watching out for.
Evan, how about you? What are your thoughts? Shenault, Agnew, Jones?
Yeah, so in my opinion, the guy who might get the most yardage on you is a guy like Shenault or Marvin Jones. But the guy who's going to really keep the Bills' defense on their heels the entire game is Jamal Agnew. Like you mentioned, he is their Isaiah McKenzie gadget player. He's going to be moving left and right all throughout the game. He's going to be in the slot. He's been a very refined route runner this year. He's taken a big step into his game, really becoming that third receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I don't know if he's going to put up the stat line again like Shenault or Jones will, but he is a guy who's going to really keep the Bills on their heels and really make Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier go deeper into their defensive playbook and come up with schemes just to stop Jamal Agnew.
Cal, how about you? I take it you're probably a Marvin Jones guy based on what Manny had to say here.
So I think I typically would say Marvin Jones, but I don't know if I say Marvin Jones this week. I think he's the guy who has that most consistent potential where he's probably going to get you, we talked about this on the show, but he's probably going to get you between 5 and 7 catches, between 40 to 70 yards. Some weeks he might throw in a touchdown and it'll bump up those numbers a little bit. And he's going to be consistent with that. He always kind of has been when he was in Detroit, even when he was on bad teams. He's always been that kind of guy. I think the guy that scares me the most this week is a guy who can have that run after catch ability. And Marvin Jones doesn't have that as much as a guy like Shenault or a guy like Agnew have. Both of them worry me a little bit more in terms of once they get the ball, the Bills have to make sure they wrap them up and bring them down. Because if they don't, if they make a guy miss, and we've seen the Bills have struggled a little bit with missed tackles, if they miss tackles on those guys, they could house it. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen or anything, obviously, but they have to be much better about breakdown, make the tackle. This isn't a week where I think you try and go for real big hits on guys like that because they can shake them off and they can actually break one and get a couple extra yards because they're really good yard after catch guys. So those are the two guys I would actually be as much as I like Marvin Jones better out of the three of them, I would go more towards the other guys just for those reasons.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting, right? I think that we are going to see the Jacksonville Jaguars throw a lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage. And I think the Buffalo Bills got to be ready to wrap up and tackle this week. I think that's where the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to try to beat us. Laviska Shenault catching the ball around the line of scrimmage, looking for Yak, looking to get blockers in front of him. Jamal Agnew on misdirections or getting the ball in his hands at or around the line of scrimmage with some blockers in front of him. That is what I believe the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to try to do, is just try to funnel this offense through Jamal Agnew and Laviska Shenault in the short yardage situations to try to get that yak to make up for the lack of James Robinson. So the Buffalo Bills got to be ready. Historically, under McDermott, they've struggled to tackle. They've been better this year. They got to continue being better this year. Or guys like Shenault, guys like Agnew, they can house it on you. Brendan P. coming in saying, here's the question, though. Does Lawrence wear his hair up to avoid getting sacked by it? Never was not expecting that question today. I'm going to say probably not, because, I mean, if you have hair like that, you're probably going to want to show it off. I mean, you probably don't care about the ramifications. You're going to want to show it off. But speaking of the short area game, Clay, Matthew Montgomery asked you a question earlier, and I really want your take on this. The misdirection game and the motion game, as guys, things like Isaiah McKenzie and those jet sweeps are absent-ish from this offense this year. Are the Buffalo Bills holding that back for later on in the season, or is that no longer part of this Buffalo Bills offense?
Yeah, I don't know. First of all, can you hear me okay? My sound is weird in my ears. Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
So first of all, it's hard to tell sometimes. I do think pre-snap motion is one of the best things that you can do for your offense. It helps your quarterback out. It helps your wide receivers out. And in some cases, it helps your offensive line out as well. So doing that pre-snap motion just tells you a lot about what the defense is doing. And then, the jet sweep motion as well, that affects the linebackers so heavily. If you have Isaiah McKenzie in a jet sweep motion across the formation, a linebacker has to respond to that, or, a defensive back on the side of the field that he's doing that motion to. So I definitely feel like there's been a lack of it. And maybe that is because they're trying to save it. Maybe they're kind of doing hey, we're not doing this anymore until they do it. So I wouldn't be too upset because of the strength of schedule that the Bills have. It's one of the weakest in the league. So if they're saving those for the teams in the games that really matter, then I'm completely fine with that. But I do think it's a little strange that they're not using quite as much movement. Even pre-snap, it feels like there's not as much going on. I know Josh will still move some guys around here and there. Usually I think that's more so just he sees something in the defense and he wants guys in specific spots. It's not so much to move those guys around to get different looks in kind of like a Matt Canada way where you would move guys around to see what the defense does. It's more so Josh is like, I want my guys here. I'm going to move them there. So I do think that's kind of strange that it's a little bit different in that regard, but maybe there's just more confidence in Josh Allen being able to read the defense without that motion to the point where it's like, we don't have to do this anymore. We can just leave our guys in the same spot and Josh already knows what to do.
Yeah, great. Some great points there. We got a comment here from Dominic Bouchard that I want to share. He says, do you think Arnold is a threat after back-to-back games of about 8 receptions? Yeah, that's a really good point. We obviously didn't have a chance to get to Dan Arnold yet. We're about to give our predictions here. But if the Jacksonville Jaguars want to beat the Buffalo Bills, the recipe for success on offense is probably get Dan Arnold a bunch of catches, get the linebackers thinking about Dan Arnold, run the ball successfully with Carlos Hyde, and then once those linebackers start creeping up again, hit guys like Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault on those slants. That seems to be the recipe for trying to move the ball in this Buffalo Bills offense, is get those linebackers creeping up. So a guy like Dan Arnold having some success, get the linebackers overthinking some things, that would be their recipe for success today offensively. Speaking of today's game, it is time now for predictions. So let's go around the horn here and let's get everyone's predictions for this football game. Evan, what's your prediction?
My prediction, man, I'm trying to think of this. Maybe I want to say about 37-16. I think Josh Allen and the guys get this lead up early. Obviously, like you mentioned earlier, a couple deep shots to Diggs and Sanders to really extend that lead out in front for the Buffalo Bills. I think they get up and early. They get a strong lead, try to mix in a little run here and there. But I think this could be a strong game where they win 37-16 or 40-16, something around that.
All right, Manny, what is your prediction for today's game?
I think we see our first 100-yard rusher of the season, and I think the Bills win 48-10.
Ooh, that's a lot of points there. Clay, what do you got?
I was going to say 42-10. I think it shouldn't be a difficult game. You know, when you look at the team that the Bills are playing, they don't have a running back and they're playing against a rookie quarterback. They shouldn't 10, I think, would be a good score for the Jags if they can put up 10 points. And the Bills, I mean, Josh Allen should be able to tear up this defense.
All right, Kyle, what do you got?
So I have made 2 large win predictions this season, and they have both come back to bite us because I made them week 1 and then I made them right before the bye. But I'm gonna roll with it again because I think this is just a week where we should be confident. I think that there's going to be a play where we finally get that Josh Allen versus Josh Allen play that everybody's been talking about, where something happens where our Josh Allen makes a play against their Josh Allen and kind of beats him, gets past the line of scrimmage, maybe scores a touchdown. So that's what my prediction would be there. I'm going to roll with 38-13 though for my score prediction. I think predicting in the 40s, I would love to have the confidence to do that. I want to have the confidence to do that, but I just, after my real big predictions earlier in the season, I'm going to hold back just a little bit, keep it just under 40. But I think we're going to walk away from this just feeling really good about the team in general, whether it's because the running game was good or the passing game was good.
All right, that is about to do it for the show. My prediction here, I'm going Buffalo 34, Jacksonville 13. I think the Buffalo Bills just consistently drive the football. I think the running game gets going a little bit. I think Josh Allen does what he does. I mean, the Seahawks curb stomped this team last week with Geno Smith. I understand it's a week-to-week league. I understand things change. But if you're the Buffalo Bills, 100%, there cannot be a letdown this week. So, gentlemen, the esteemed panel, Evan,
5 TDs.
Mighty Dio,
I thought that was
that looks like it says something else.
I thought that was
Josh Allen does not have STDs, folks. He's just going to throw 5 touchdowns this week. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, hopefully with
Jacksonville.
With less. I was just trying to troll Jacksonville people this morning. I was like, is it a destination city? Because we've been talking about like Nashville and New Orleans, and there's a bunch of Bills fans down in Jacksonville. Earlier, someone said that the stadium is mostly Bills fans. We have to avenge the playoff loss in Jacksonville. We have to avenge Tyrod, who's starting again today. So until next time, everyone, go Bills. Manny, have your daughter give us a nice little wave and have her give us a go Bills shout out to end this thing.
Say it. Now she's shy. She wanted to say, she told me before the show she wants to say go Bills. And now she's getting shy on camera.
Well, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.